Commander Zekthar stared at the red warning lights flashing across his control panel. Each blinking light meant another system was failing on his ship. The air recyclers had stopped working 2 hours ago. The heating system died yesterday. Now, even the emergency power was running low. He pressed his scaled hand against his forehead and tried to think. 3 weeks ago, his ship, the Starweaver, had been flying through space on an important mission. They were going to meet with the humans to talk about peace between their two peoples. The Valerian Republic had sent him because he was one of their best commanders. He had fought in many battles and always brought his crew home safe. But now his ship was broken and floating in empty space. They were lost between the stars with no way to call for help. The engine had exploded without warning, tearing a huge hole in the ship's side. Half of his crew had died in that first terrible moment. The other half were now slowly dying as the ship's life support systems failed one by one. Zekthar looked around his bridge at the surviving crew members. Their blue skin had turned pale and gray. They moved slowly because the air was getting thin. Everyone knew they were going to die out here in the cold darkness of space. His second in command, Lyra Esh, walked over to him. She had been with him for 10 years. She was smart and brave, but now she looked tired and scared. She carried a small device in her hands that showed the ship's condition. "Commander," she said in a weak voice, "the air will run out in 6 hours, maybe less. The distress beacon stopped working an hour ago. No one knows where we are." Zekthar nodded but said nothing. He had been a soldier for 40 years. He had seen many battles and lost many friends, but he had never felt so helpless before. In battle, you could fight back. You could shoot at your enemies or run away. But you cannot fight empty space. You cannot shoot at broken machines or dying air recyclers. He walked to the big window at the front of his bridge and looked out at the stars. They looked cold and far away. Each star was like a tiny light in an ocean of darkness. Somewhere out there were planets full of people living their lives, but none of them knew that 27 Valerians were dying slowly in a broken ship. The Valerians were proud people. Their civilization was thousands of years old. They had built great cities and powerful starships when most other species were still living in caves. They thought they were better than younger species like the humans. Humans had only been traveling between stars for 50 years. To the Valerians, they were like children playing with toys they did not understand. Zekthar remembered the orders he had received from the High Council. They told him to meet with the humans and pretend to want peace. But really, the Council thought humans were weak and stupid. They believed that humans would agree to give up some of their colonies if the Valerians threatened them enough. Now Zekthar wondered if anyone would even look for them. His own people probably thought the mission had failed and written them off as lost. The humans would probably be happy to hear that a Valerian ship had disappeared. Why would they waste time and money looking for enemies who hated them? Young engineer Korvac walked up to him. Korvac was only 25 years old, and this was his first mission in deep space. He had been excited to see other worlds and meet alien species. Now his dreams were turning into a nightmare. "Sir," Korvac said, "I've been trying to fix the beacon, but the power coupling is completely burned out. Even if I could fix it, we don't have enough power to send a signal strong enough for anyone to hear." "What about the emergency pods?" Zekthar asked. Korvac shook his head. "They were all destroyed when the engine exploded. The blast damaged that whole section of the ship." Zekthar felt a cold feeling in his chest that had nothing to do with the failing heaters. They were truly trapped. Even if they had working escape pods, they were too far from any planet or space station. The pods only had enough air and power for a few days. He thought about his family back on Valeria Prime. His mate Senna and their 2 children were probably wondering why he had not sent them a message in 3 weeks. His son Drac was starting military academy next month. His daughter Vera was learning to pilot small aircraft. They were both so proud that their father was a famous commander. What would happen to them when the news came that he was dead? Would the Republic take care of military families whose fathers died on secret missions? He hoped so, but he was not sure. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Some were trying to fix broken systems. Others were checking supplies and making lists of what they had left. A few were writing messages to their families, even though there was no way to send them. Dr. Thane, the ship's medical officer, was moving from person to person checking on everyone's health. The lack of good air was making people sick. Some crew members were having trouble breathing. Others felt dizzy and weak. Zekthar made a decision. He activated the ship's communication system. Even though the long-range beacon was broken, the short-range radio still worked. Maybe someone would hear them. "This is Commander Zekthar of the Valerian Republic ship Starweaver," he said into the microphone. "We are in distress and require immediate assistance. Our position is Sector 77 Alpha, grid reference 449. We have 27 crew members aboard. Our life support is failing. If anyone receives this message, please help us." He repeated the message several times, then turned off the radio. The bridge was quiet except for the sound of failing machinery and people breathing hard in the thin air. "Do you think anyone will hear us?" Lyresh asked. Zekthar looked at her tired face and tried to sound confident. "Perhaps. We must hope." But, deep inside, he did not believe his own words. They were too far from the normal shipping routes. Space was too big and they were too small. In a few hours, the Starweaver would become a tomb floating in the darkness, and no one would ever know what happened to them. Captain Jake Miller was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started beeping on his ship's bridge. The Liberty's Dawn was a big cargo ship that carried supplies to the outer colonies. It was not fancy or fast, but it was strong and reliable. Jake had been flying cargo ships for 15 years, and he knew every sound his ship made. This alarm was different. It came from the emergency radio system. "Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station, "I'm picking up something strange on the distress frequencies." Jake put down his coffee cup and walked over to Amy's station. Amy was young but very good at her job. She could hear radio signals that most people would miss. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she tried to make the signal clearer. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked. "It's very weak, sir. Someone is calling for help, but they're far away. Maybe 4 hours of travel time from here." Amy frowned at her screen. "The strange part is the signal pattern. It's not human." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Out here in deep space, meeting aliens was always dangerous. Most alien species avoided humans. Some were friendly, but others saw humans as enemies. "Can you tell what species?" he asked. Amy worked on her controls for another minute. "Yes, sir. The signal matches Valerian technology, but according to our star charts, there shouldn't be any Valerian ships in this area." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone knew about the Valerians. They were an old and powerful alien race that controlled many star systems. They thought humans were young and stupid. For the past 10 years, Valerian and human ships had fought several small battles along the border between their territories. Chief Engineer Pete Collins looked up from his station. Pete was an older man with gray hair and rough hands. He had worked on starships since he was 16 years old. Everyone on the crew respected him. "Captain," Pete said slowly, "I know the Valerians don't like us much, but if there's a ship in trouble out there, we have to help. That's the law of space. Any ship that finds another ship in distress has to offer help." Jake nodded. Pete was right. The law was clear. It did not matter if the other ship belonged to friends or enemies. If people were dying in space, you had to try to save them. But Jake also knew that helping Valerians could be dangerous. What if it was a trap? What if the Valerians were pretending to be in trouble so they could capture a human ship? Some of his crew had families back on Earth. He had to think about their safety too. "Amy, can you tell how many ships are out there?" Jake asked. "Just one, sir, and the signal is getting weaker." If they were faking distress, they would make the signal stronger, not weaker. Communications Officer Bob Harris spoke up from his station. "Captain, I've been listening to their message. They're asking for help in basic galactic language. They say they have 27 people on board and their life support is failing. They sound scared." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. There were 12 humans on the Liberty's Dawn. They were not soldiers or diplomats. They were just working people trying to make a living by hauling cargo between the colonies. None of them had signed up to fight aliens or make first contact with enemy species. But they were also good people. Jake had chosen his crew carefully over the years. He picked people who worked hard and looked out for each other. The kind of people who would help a stranger fix a broken-down vehicle on a lonely road. "Sir," said Amy quietly. The signal just got weaker again. "If we're going to help them, we need to decide soon." Jake thought about his father, who had been a rescue worker back on Earth. His father had pulled people out of burning buildings and car crashes for 30 years. He always said that when someone needed help, you did not stop to ask if they were rich or poor, black or white, good or bad. You just helped them because that was what decent people did. "Navigation," Jake called out. "Set course for that distress. Signal, maximum speed." "Aye, sir," replied Navigator Chris Stone. "Course set. We'll be there in 4 hours and 20 minutes. Amy, try to contact them. Let them know help is coming." Amy worked her controls and then spoke into her microphone. "Unknown vessel. This is the Terran cargo ship Liberty's Dawn. We have received your distress call and are heading to your location. Please respond." For a long moment there was only static. Then a voice came through the speakers. It sounded strange because it was an alien voice, but the universal translator made the words clear. "Terran vessel, this is Commander Zekthar of the Valerian Republic ship Starweaver. We are in great danger. Our ship is dying and we cannot repair it." Jake took the microphone from Amy. "Commander Zekthar, this is Captain Jake Miller. We're on our way to help you. How much time do you have?" "Captain Miller," the alien voice said, and Jake could hear surprise in it. "We have perhaps 5 hours of breathable air remaining. But I must ask, why are you helping us? Our peoples are not friends." The question hung in the air. Jake's crew looked at him, waiting to see what he would say. He thought about all the reasons he could give. He could talk about space law or doing what was right. He could mention that maybe helping each other was the only way their species would learn to get along. But in the end, Jake gave the simplest answer he could think of. "Because you need help, Commander. And we're in a position to give it. We'll see you in 4 hours." Jake handed the microphone back to Amy and turned to his crew. "All right, people. We have work to do. Pete, I want you to check our docking systems and make sure they can connect to an alien ship. Amy, keep monitoring their signal and let me know if their condition changes. Chris, I want our fastest possible course to their location." "What if it is a trap?" asked Bob quietly. Jake looked at his communications officer. Bob was a careful man who always thought about dangers. That made him good at his job, but sometimes he worried too much. "Bob, if 27 people are really dying out there, then we're their only hope. If it's a trap, well, we'll deal with that when it happens. But I'm not going to let people die because I'm afraid of what might happen." Dr. Susan Reed came onto the bridge. She was the ship's medical officer, a calm woman in her 40s who had treated everything from broken bones to alien diseases. "Captain, I heard we're going to rescue some Valerians. I'm getting the medical bay ready. Do we know anything about their biology?" "Not much, Doc. But they breathe oxygen like we do, so whatever's wrong with their life support is probably something you can treat." "I'll do my best, sir." As the Liberty's Dawn changed course and increased speed toward the dying alien ship, Jake felt a mixture of worry and determination. He did not know what they would find when they reached the Valerians. He did not know if his crew would be safe. But he knew they were doing the right thing. In 4 hours, they would find out if one small act of kindness could make a difference in the vast darkness of space. The Liberty's Dawn dropped out of warp speed and Captain Jake Miller got his first look at the alien ship. The Starweaver was beautiful even though it was badly damaged. It was long and curved like a sea creature, with smooth lines that human ships did not have. But now it floated dead in space with no lights and holes torn in its side. "Jesus," whispered Navigator Chris Stone. "Look at the size of that thing. It's twice as big as we are." Jake studied the alien vessel through the main window. He could see where something had exploded inside the ship and blown out part of the hull. Pieces of metal and debris floated around it like a cloud. The ship was completely dark, except for a few small emergency lights. "Amy, open a channel to them," Jake ordered. "Channel open, sir." "Valerian vessel Starweaver. This is Captain Miller of the Liberty's Dawn. We can see your ship, and we're here to help. What's your status?" For a moment there was only silence. Then the alien voice came through the speakers, much clearer now that they were closer. "Captain Miller, This is Commander Zekthar. Our situation is very bad. We have lost main power, life support, and artificial gravity. Many of our crew died when the engine exploded. The rest of us are slowly suffocating. Jake could hear the desperation in the alien commander's voice. Whatever else the Valerians might be, they were living beings who were scared and dying. Commander, we're going to dock with your ship and get you out of there. How many survivors do you have? 27 crew members are still alive, but some are badly injured. Captain Miller, I must ask you again, why are you doing this? Your people and mine have been enemies for years. The question made Jake uncomfortable. He knew that if the situation were reversed, most Valerian ships would probably just leave the humans to die. The Valerians had made it clear that they thought humans were inferior and not worth saving. Commander, we can talk about politics later. Right now, let's focus on keeping your people alive. Jake turned to his crew. Pete, take a team and check our docking system. I want to know if we can connect to their ship safely. Doc Reed, get the medical bay ready for alien patients. Amy, keep monitoring their life signs if you can. Chief Engineer Pete Collins was already moving toward the door. I'll need about 20 minutes to set up the universal docking clamps, Captain. Their ship design is different from ours. Do whatever you need to do, Pete. Fast as you can. Dr. Reed was studying her medical scanner. Captain, I'm picking up life signs from their ship. They're weak, but I can see 27 individuals. Their heart rates are elevated and their breathing is shallow. Classic signs of oxygen deprivation. Jake nodded. How long do they have? At this rate, maybe 2 hours. 3 at the most. The next 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Jake watched through the window as Pete and his engineering team worked to modify their docking port. The Valerian ship was so different from human designs that connecting the two vessels was like trying to fit puzzle pieces from different sets. Finally, Pete's voice came over the radio. Captain, we're ready to attempt docking. It's not going to be pretty, but it should work. Do it. Jake felt the Liberty's dawn shudder as the docking clamps engaged with the alien ship. Red warning lights flashed on his control panel, but the connection held. Docking successful, Pete reported. But sir, there's no atmosphere in their docking bay. We'll need to use emergency suits to get aboard their ship. Understood. Pete, take Dr. Reed and 2 security officers. Get over there and start bringing survivors back. Already on my way, Captain. Jake opened the channel to the Valerian ship again. Commander Zekthar, our rescue team is coming aboard your ship now. Are you able to move? Yes, Captain. Most of my crew can still walk, though we are all very weak. We will gather near your docking port. Good. Commander, our people are wearing environmental suits. Don't be alarmed by their appearance. There was a pause. Captain Miller, what do your people look like? We have never seen humans before. Jake realized that despite years of border conflicts, most Valerians and humans had never actually met face to face. They had only fought ship-to-ship battles at long range. We're smaller than you, with pink or brown skin instead of blue. We have hair on our heads and our eyes are different colors. But Commander, we breathe the same air and bleed the same red blood. We're not so different. 20 minutes. Later, Pete's voice came over the radio again. Captain, we've got them. All 27 survivors are accounted for. Some need immediate medical attention, but they're all alive. Jake felt relief wash over him. Bring them aboard, Pete. Doc Reed, are you ready? Medical bay is prepared. Captain, I've converted Cargo Bay 2 into temporary quarters for the survivors. As the first group of Valerian survivors came through the airlock, Jake got his first look at real aliens. They were tall and thin with blue-gray skin and large dark eyes. They moved gracefully even though they were weak and injured. Their faces were more angular than human faces, but Jake could see intelligence and emotion in their expressions. Commander Zekthar was among the first group. He was older than the others, with silver markings on his blue skin that might have been scars or natural patterns. He looked around the human ship with obvious curiosity and confusion. Captain Miller? He asked, his voice uncertain. That's me, Commander. Jake stepped forward and extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Zekthar stared at the offered hand for a moment, then reached out and grasped it. His skin was cooler than human skin, and his grip was stronger, but the handshake felt natural. Captain, your ship is much smaller than ours, yet you risked everything to save us. I do not understand this. Jake looked around at the alien survivors. They were watching him with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. Some were leaning on human crew members for support. Dr. Reed was already examining the injured ones with the same care she would show human patients. Commander, out here in space, we're all just travelers trying to get home safely. Your people were in trouble and we were able to help. It's really that simple. But we are enemies, Zekthar insisted. My government has said terrible things about your species. We have fought battles against your ships. Jake nodded. I know. But those battles were between governments and military forces. You and your crew aren't soldiers right now. You're just people who needed help. One of the younger Valerians, barely more than a teenager, was staring at the human crew with wide eyes. He whispered something to another survivor in their own language. What did he say? Jake asked. Zekthar looked embarrassed. He said your people look smaller and weaker than he expected, but they seem very kind. He has never seen aliens before. Neither have most of my crew. This is a first for all of us. Dr. Reed approached them. Captain, I've examined all the survivors. They're suffering from oxygen deprivation and some have minor injuries from the explosion, but everyone will recover. Their biology is similar enough to ours that I can treat them with standard medications. Thank you, Doc. Commander, my medical officer says your people are going to be fine. Zekthar's large eyes showed relief. Captain Miller, how can we ever prepay this debt? You have saved 27 lives. You don't owe us anything, Commander. Just help us figure out how to get you home safely. As Jake watched his crew working alongside the alien survivors, sharing food and blankets, helping the injured, and trying to communicate despite the language barriers, he realized something important was happening. For the first time in years, humans and Valerians were seeing each other not as enemies, but as people. It was a small step, but maybe it was the beginning of something bigger. 3 days had passed since the rescue, and the Liberty's Dawn was traveling toward the nearest space station where the Valerian survivors could be picked up by their own people. During those 3 days, Commander Zekthar watched the human crew with growing amazement. He had expected the humans to treat his people like prisoners or unwanted guests. After all, the Valerian government had taught that humans were violent and selfish creatures who cared only about themselves. But what he saw was completely different. Dr. Susan Reed worked around the clock to care for the injured Valerians. She gave them the same medicines she would give to humans. She stayed up late with the ones who were sickest, checking on them every few hours. When young engineer Korvac developed a fever, she sat by his bed and cooled his forehead with wet cloths, just like a mother caring for her child. Chief Engineer Pete Collins spent hours with the Valerian technical crew, learning about their ship's design. Even though the Starweaver was completely destroyed, Pete wanted to understand how their technology worked. He shared human engineering techniques and showed them how to repair some of their damaged equipment. The human crew shared their food with the aliens, even though it meant smaller portions for everyone. When they discovered that Valerians could not eat some human foods, Cook Mary Johnson worked extra hours to find meals that both species could enjoy. She taught some of the younger Valerians how to prepare simple human dishes. What surprised Zekthar most was how the humans treated his people with respect. They did not stare at the aliens or make them feel like strange creatures. When the Valerians told stories about their home world, the humans listened with genuine interest. When the aliens showed pictures of their families, the humans shared pictures of their own loved ones. Captain Jake Miller made sure the Valerians had comfortable places to sleep and privacy when they needed it. He gave up his own cabin so that Sub-Commander Lyra Esch would have a quiet place to recover from her injuries. When some of the younger Valerians became homesick and sad, he arranged for them to send messages to their families through the ship's communication system. On the 3rd day, Zekthar found Captain Miller in the ship's small dining area, eating breakfast and reading reports on his tablet. The Valerian commander sat down across from him. Captain Miller, may I speak with you privately? Of course, Commander. What's on your mind? Zekthar looked around the dining area. 2 human crew members were teaching a young Valerian how to play a card game. Another human was showing an alien engineer how to use human tools. Everyone was laughing and having a good time. "Your people confuse me greatly," Zekthar said quietly. Jake looked up from his tablet. "How so?" "My government told me that humans are primitive and cruel. They said you fight among yourselves constantly and care nothing for other species. They said you would destroy anyone who gets in your way as you spread across the galaxy." Jake set down his tablet and gave Zekthar his full attention. "And what do you think now?" "I think my government was wrong. Very wrong." Zekthar shook his head slowly. "In 3 days I have seen your people risk their lives to save strangers. I have seen them share their food and medicine with aliens they have never met before. I have seen them treat my crew with kindness and respect, even though our peoples have been enemies." Jake nodded but said nothing, waiting for the alien commander to continue. "Yesterday I watched your Dr. Reed sit up all night with Korvac when his fever was high. She has her own duties and her own people to care for, but she stayed with a dying alien because she thought he needed her. When I asked her why, she said it was her job to help anyone who was hurt or sick." "That sounds like Doc Reed," Jake said with a smile. "Your engineer Collins could have ignored our broken equipment. After all, our ship is destroyed and cannot be repaired. But he spent hours learning how our systems work so he could salvage what he could for us. He said it was important for us to have something from our old ship to remember our lost crewmates." Jake felt a lump in his throat. He had not known about Pete's efforts to save pieces of the Valerian ship. "Captain, yesterday one of my younger crew members asked me why the humans were being so nice to us. He said that if humans were really as bad as our leaders claim, they would have left us floating in space to die. He wanted to know why they risked their own safety to save enemies." "What did you tell him?" Zekthar was quiet for a long moment. "I told him that perhaps everything we learned about humans was wrong. I told him that maybe the real question is not why humans saved us, but why we never tried to understand them before." Jake picked up his coffee cup and took a sip. "Commander, I won't pretend that all humans are saints. We have our share of bad people, just like any species. But most of us try to do the right thing when we can." "The right thing," Zekthar repeated. "Captain, when you found our ship, you could have simply reported our location to the authorities and continued on your mission. You could have called for a proper rescue ship with better equipment. Why did you risk your own vessel and crew to save us yourself?" Jake thought about the question. It was the same one that Bob Harris had asked 3 days ago, and that Zekthar had asked over the radio when they first made contact. "Commander, I've been flying through space for 15 years. I've learned that out here, we're all just trying to survive and get home to our families. Your crew was in trouble and we were the only ship close enough to help. If we had waited for someone else, your people would have died. But we are supposed to be your enemies. Are we?" Jake asked. "Commander, I look at your people and I see fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, people who work hard and care about their families. That doesn't sound like enemies to me. That sounds like neighbors we just haven't gotten to know yet." Zekthar felt something change inside his chest. For 40 years he had been a loyal soldier of the Valerian Republic. He had followed orders without question and believed what his leaders told him about other species. But now he was seeing with his own eyes that everything he had been taught was wrong. "Captain Miller, what will happen when we reach the space station? When my people come to take us home? I imagine there will be a lot of questions and reports to file. This is probably the first time humans and Valerians have spent this much time together peacefully. Will your government be angry that you helped us?" Jake shrugged. "Maybe some people will be unhappy, but most humans believe in helping others when they can. I think more people will be proud than angry. And what about your crew? Do they regret helping us?" Jake looked around the dining area again. Amy Rodriguez was showing a Valerian communications officer how human radio systems worked. Pete Collins was drawing diagrams on a napkin, explaining something about engine design to 3 fascinated aliens. Dr. Reed was checking the bandages on an injured Valerian's arm. "Commander, does this look like a crew that regrets what they did?" Zekthar followed Jake's gaze and saw his own people laughing and talking with the humans, as if they had been friends for years. Some of the younger Valerians were even trying to speak English words they had learned. "No," he said quietly. "It does not. Commander, Can I ask you something? Of course. What will you tell your government about what happened here? Zekthar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he looked directly at Jake with his large, dark eyes. I will tell them the truth, Captain Miller. I will tell them that we have been very wrong about humanity, and that it is time for our peoples to stop being enemies and start being friends. 5 days after the rescue, the Liberty's Dawn arrived at Kepler Station, a large space station that served as a trading post between different worlds. The station was neutral territory where ships from many different species could dock safely. It was the perfect place for the Valerians to meet a rescue ship from their own government. Commander Zekthar stood at the window of the human ship's observation deck, watching the space station grow larger as they approached. It was shaped like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space, with docking ports around the rim where ships could attach themselves. Captain Jake Miller joined him at the window. Impressive sight, isn't it? Kepler Station has been here for almost 30 years. Ships from 12 different species use it regularly. Have humans and Valerians ever met here before? Zekthar asked. Not that I know of. Our peoples have avoided each other pretty carefully. This might be the first time. Amy. Rodriguez's voice came over the ship's communication system. Captain, I'm receiving a message from Kepler Station. They say a Valerian rescue ship called the Nightwind arrived 2 hours ago and is waiting for us. Thank you, Amy. Tell them we'll be docking in 30 minutes. Zekthar felt nervous about seeing his own people again. During the past 5 days, he had learned so much about humans that his whole view of the galaxy had changed. But how could he explain that to the captain of the Nightwind? How could he make other Valerians understand what he had experienced? Captain Miller, he said quietly, I want to thank you again for what you have done. You and your crew saved 27 lives. More than that, you have shown me that everything I believed about humans was wrong. Jake turned away from the window to face the alien commander. Commander, you don't need to thank us. We did what anyone should do when they find people in trouble. But that is exactly what I mean, Zekthar said with excitement in his voice. You say what anyone should do as if helping strangers is the most natural thing in the world. But my people do not think that way. If a Valerian ship found humans in distress, most commanders would leave them to die. Jake felt sad when he heard this, but he was not really surprised. The border conflicts between their peoples had shown him that Valerians could be cruel and cold. Maybe that will change now, Jake said hopefully. I will do everything I can to make it change, Zekthar promised. 30 minutes later, the Liberties Dawn docked with Kepler Station. The Valerian survivors gathered in the cargo bay with their few possessions. Many of them had tears in their eyes as they prepared to leave the human ship. During their 5 days together, they had become friends with the human crew. Young engineer Korvac approached Dr. Reed with a small device in his hands. Dr. Reed, this is a Valerian medical scanner. I want you to have it as a gift. Maybe it will help you understand alien biology better. Dr. Reed accepted the gift with a smile. Thank you, Korvac. You take care of yourself, and remember to take your medicine for another week. I will remember, Korvac promised. Chief Engineer Pete Collins was saying goodbye to the Valerian technical crew. You people are amazing engineers, he told them. Your ship designs are 100 years ahead of ours. I hope someday we can work together and learn from each other. Sub-Commander Lyra Esch hugged Cook Mary Johnson. Thank you for teaching me to make human bread. I will try to make some for my family when I get home. Captain Miller watched his crew saying goodbye to the aliens and felt proud of them. In 5 days, they had shown what humans could be at their best. They had turned enemies into friends just by treating them with kindness and respect. Commander Zekthar was the last to leave. He stood in front of Captain Miller and extended his hand for a final handshake. Captain Miller, I must ask you one more question, he said. When you found us floating in space, you risked your ship and crew to save people you had every reason to hate. I need to understand why you did this. Jake thought carefully before answering. Commander, I have a daughter back on Earth. She's 12 years old and wants to be a doctor when she grows up. If she were out here in space someday and her ship broke down, I would hope that whoever found her would help her no matter what species they were. I helped your people because I hoped someone would help mine if they needed it. Zekthar felt his eyes fill with tears. You saved us because you hoped someone would save your own daughter? I saved you because it was the right thing to do. But, yes, I hope that by showing kindness to your people, maybe your people will show kindness to mine. Captain Miller, I promise you this. If I ever meet a human ship in distress, I will remember what you did for us, and I will make sure my people remember too. They shook hands one final time, and then Zekthar walked through the airlock into Kepler Station. His crew followed him, many of them looking back and waving at the human crew who had saved their lives. On the space station, Zekthar met Captain Vorn of the Valerian rescue ship Nightwind. Vorn was a younger officer who had been sent to collect the survivors and bring them home. Commander Zekthar, Vorn said formally, I am glad to see you alive. The High Council was told that your ship was destroyed, and all hands were lost. We would have been lost if not for the humans, Zekthar replied. Vorn's face showed surprise and confusion. Humans? Commander? What humans? The crew of the cargo ship Liberty's Dawn found us dying in space and rescued us. They saved 27. Valerian lives at great risk to themselves. That cannot be right, Vorn said with disbelief. Humans would never help Valerians. They are our enemies. Zekthar looked back toward the docking port where the human ship was attached to the station. Through a window, he could see Captain Miller and his crew preparing to continue their journey to the outer colonies. Captain Vorn, I have spent 5 days living with humans. I have seen how they treat strangers with kindness. I have watched them share their food and medicine with aliens they had never met before. I have seen them risk their lives to save people who were supposed to be their enemies. Zekthar turned back to face the younger captain. Everything we have been taught about humans is wrong. During the journey back to Valerian space, Zekthar told his story over and over again to Captain Vorn and the crew of the Nightwind. He described how the humans had modified their ship to rescue aliens. He told them about Dr. Reed staying up all night to care for sick Valerians. He explained how the human crew had shared everything they had with people they should have considered enemies. By the time they reached the Valerian homeworld, even Captain Vorn was beginning to believe that maybe humans were not the monsters they had been told about. 3 months later, Commander Zekthar stood before the Valerian High Council in the Great Assembly Hall on Valeria Prime. The 12 council members sat in their tall chairs, looking down at him with serious expressions. Commander Zekthar, said High Councillor Thexara, you have submitted a most unusual report about your rescue. You claim that humans saved your lives and treated you with kindness. This is difficult for us to believe. Honorable councillors, every word in my report is true. I have 26 witnesses who will confirm what I have told you. And you recommend that we begin peace talks with the humans? I recommend more than that, Zekthar said firmly. I recommend that we apologize to the humans for our past behavior and ask them to be our allies instead of our enemies. The council chamber became very quiet. No one had ever suggested that the proud Valerian Republic should apologize to anyone, especially to a young species like the humans. Commander, said Councillor Velak slowly, you are asking us to change thousands of years of tradition. Valerians do not apologize to inferior species. With respect, Councillor, humans are not inferior. They are different from us, but they have something we have lost. They have compassion. They have the courage to help strangers even when it is dangerous. They risk their lives for people they have never met before. Zekthar looked up at the 12 council members. Honorable councillors, Captain Jake Miller and his crew saved 27 Valerian lives. They asked for nothing in return. They did it simply because it was the right thing to do. If that is not the mark of a superior civilization, then I do not know what is. 6 months later, the first official peace treaty between the Valerian Republic and the Terran Federation was signed aboard Kepler Station. Commander Zekthar and Captain Jake Miller were both present for the ceremony as honored guests. As they watched their leaders shake hands and promise friendship between their peoples, Jake turned to his alien friend. Commander, do you think this peace will last? Zekthar smiled, something he had learned to do from watching humans. Captain Miller, I believe it will. because now both our peoples know that we are not so different after all. We all want the same things: to live in peace, to care for our families, and to explore the stars together. The rescue of the Star Weaver became known as the turning point in human-Valyrian relations. But for Jake Miller and his crew, it was just another day's work. The day they proved that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the galaxy.